Brooks, good to have you on the program. So how is this now going to affect the Umkhonto we Sizwe party? They rely a lot, of course, on the name and the reputation of Jacob Zuma.
What it's going to do in response to your question is that it's not clear what it's going to do. As your lead-in explains, the MK party can appeal, and they certainly will appeal the decision of the Independent Electoral Commission to ban him from being a candidate. The ANC, of course, has had a couple of rounds of court cases with, cases with MK, one of which involved its emblem for the ballot. The ANC argued that the spear on the emblem looked remarkably like the old Umkhonto we Sizwe Liberation Army, and the IEC ruled that it wasn't quite the same, and therefore they could use it. If you read the polls carefully, and there have been a lot of polls, not all of which are working on the same statistical methodologies, the ANC, by some measures, is only going to gain 38% of the vote if it were taken today, and by other measures, 53%. Now, that's a big spread. That's 15%, and that's well beyond the normal kind of difference that you get in polling data. So one thing we are absolutely clear about is that the actual circumstances of the various parties is unclear. And there are suspicions that MK will be able to mount a strong challenge to the ANC in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, where Jacob Zuma comes from. There are other people who say if Jacob Zuma is not able to stand for election, the party's support base will begin to wither rather significantly. So right now we're in that marvelous but frustrating space where it's not clear what the outcome is going to be. The big question now going forward is if the ANC does not get 50% of the vote, there will have to be a coalition of some type that will govern the country. And therein, it becomes an enormously complicated game of three-dimensional chess.
Brooks, I want to put this into context for our international viewers, because many will be wondering why this is being called the most important election in South Africa since democracy in 1994. Many in the country are calling out the failures of government, especially when it comes to the delivery of basic services like electricity, like water. And is this something that is really affecting the ANC right now, which has garnered so much support for decades, and now you have a party like the MK that's really splitting votes? But even before that, as you said, it didn't look like the ANC was going to gain the majority that they would be hoping for.
One of the people I talked to the other day said this election is going to be called, after it's finished, it's going to be called the water election. And why do I say that? Is because there have been significant water outages and shortages in many parts of the country, sometimes for days on end. Now, electricity outages, we're all beginning to get used to it. We grumble, we get annoyed, but we make allowances or arrangements and we do other things. I had one this afternoon for 4 hours. But water is something you really, really can't live without, which is one reason why people like me have 20 liters of drinking water stacked up in my kitchen now, just in case. The dissatisfaction with the ANC is real because of all the promises of, quote unquote, a better life for all seem to have broken down in many ways for the kinds of services people want. Transportation, water, electricity, better schooling, and so forth. And there is the other factor, and it's one that political scientists pay attention to, is that a generation or so after a liberation movement gains success, especially on this continent, after a generation or so, they tend to lose their political potency, partly because the younger generation, people who are coming into the vote well after the liberation struggle ended, those people no longer have a particular feeling of loyalty and love for the party that got them that point. They're too young to remember it. They're too young to participate in it, but they do know the failings and the lack of things as they live now.
Brooks, Spector, good to get your perspective live to us there from Johannesburg. Thank you.